Hello musicians, welcome back. This is Bucky Dirtle and I'm doing another video tutorial on a module for the VCV Rack open source module synthesis DAW. Now today I'm going to be talking about this one here. I'm going to try to pronounce this Lissajous LFO. I think this might be French, and I'm from Canada, and French is our second language, and so Lissajous, I think you pronounce that LFO. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. All right, so let's get started. This is an LFO. And now, by the way, this is from Frozen Wasteland. That's the company that's making this, the developers that are making this is Frozen Wasteland. Okay, now I love a good LFO. One of the things I don't like about some LFOs, when you just use them straight out of the box, is that they're so predictable. And in our music, we want to be able to predict what's going to happen, but we want the human element in there as well. And I say human element, this is us. This is being, all this modular synthesis is not being creating music like putting on a CD. This is us creating it and us manipulating the controls to make it what we want it to be. So sometimes just using an LFO that's producing a sine wave and, you know, I don't know, like 10 hertz or something, and that's what's going to control some filter, it can become a little tiresome in my opinion. So I like a little bit of chaos in there. I like a little bit of unknown. So this LFO gives us some of that. And it may be something that you may want to incorporate into your workflow. I'm not sure, but we're going to go over some of the ideas that this one does and see where it takes us. Okay, so the first thing is there are two LFOs in this. There are two, and for both LFOs, there are three variables. So we need to, but both LFOs work together as one. So it's one unit, but there are a number of variables. So let's just talk about this. And I usually find that when we're talking about this sort of math, it's important to understand what the variables are. And then once we understand what the variables are, then we can start thinking about how those variables interact together. So let's just start with the beginning. Let's start with one component. If I take both of these LFOs, looking at both of the LFOs, both have amplitude. So amplitude, of course, is the loudness of your wave form. So you can see that if I turn this up, it gets kind of crazy on that screen there. Well, let me just plug in our scope as well, because this scope that's on the interface for the Lissajous LFO is okay. It gives us some cool looking designs, and you may find it useful. But it's nice to use it in coordination with the proper scope. So my amplitude, as you can see over on my proper scope, was fundamental scope. You can see that's my amplitude. We have two variables in here. We have an X and a Y. So my X is giving me a certain thing. Like if I just see what my X is doing, like if I got my Y turned down, I got the amplitude turned up on LFO1. By the way, LFO2 is off. Okay, it's completely off. So as I change my X, you can see what it's doing over on the right-hand scope. Then if I turn that down and I turn up my Y, let's see what the Y does for us. Doesn't seem to be doing much of anything for us, is it? Okay, so I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind here. We are plugged, our out that we have plugged in right now is from our X's. You see this? It's the X's. So let's take our Y's, okay? And we're going to plug our Y's into here. I'm losing my mind. So now if I adjust my Y here, you can see the pink line is our Y's, our Y variables, and you can see our X's are off now. So if I turn on my X, you can see this my X is doing. Okay, two separate things. But what's happening is up on the screen here on the actual Lissajous LFO, you can see this one line because this is the sum of X and Y. So the X and Y together as two separate variables, they are giving us this up on the board. But separately, this is what they look like. Okay, so if I wanted to output only the X, I would get the blue line. If I want to output only the Y, which would be right here, you can see right here, I would be getting what's on the red line or the pink line. If I want to output both together, well, that's a different story. So let's continue going. This is only LFO1. Let me turn down the Y, so we'll have only our blue line X. Okay, so only our blue line. So this is only the X of LFO1. But down here in the bottom, where I got my yellow input, it says X's, 2 X's. So if I crank up my X on, I'll turn my amplitude all the way up on LFO2, but I have nothing input, so LFO2 is not really doing anything yet. So now if I turn up my variable on the X, on the second one, look what's happening. Now we're getting the interaction between both. So what's happening now is the X output, which we see down at the bottom, the yellow, my yellow cable right here, the X output is the combination of both of these outputs, the X and the Y variables. Now we're getting a funky looking up and down, different amplitude. It's a combination of both. Very cool. So now we have something that's not so predictable anymore. It's a up and down in our amplitude, and it's very cool. Okay, so that's that, and I can change the amplitude of my of, like, let's say number one, FO2, and it will change what the output off that yellow output is looking like. Vice versa, I can do the same with 1, and it will again change what's happening. And of course, if I can change my variable X here, I'm going to get different results. Okay, so now I can get the same results with the Y's. So if I turn up LFO1Y and I turn up LFO2Y, you can see my pink line is doing all kinds of funky things. Pretty cool. Now, those are the two independent. What about this one right here? What does this mean? X's plus Y's. Well, we already know what the X's are doing because we can see it up on our board, up on our scope. We also know what the Y's are doing. We can see it on our scope. Well, the X's plus Y's will be a combination of both. So let me just disconnect both of these and then plug in our, well, before I do that, let me give my X's a little bit of a bit of information. Both of our X's, our Y's are already doing things. Okay, so now let's go and plug it in and let's see what's going on. Now, the resulting waveform we're seeing is very interesting, very unpredictable. You know, very unpredictable. And it is both the X's plus the Y's, and it's coming in with one output, and this is what we see. This is what it would do as an LFO. This is what it would do to like a frequency modulation or a filter control or whatever. This is what it would do. Now, let's go over to the next one. Okay, we got divided by Y, X and divided by Y. Okay, so now what this is going to do is, and I have to tell you, there's not a lot of documentation on how this guy works. I had to actually reverse engineer this to try to figure out what we're getting. So I may be off on some of my math here. Okay, what this means here is, this means X's plus Y's divided by the X. And this is what we get. And look up on the scope. That's pretty crazy. So it's X's plus Y's divided by the X's. So the sum, or like, you know, the mathematical result of X plus Y divided by X, and that's what we get. So if I move my X around, you're going to get a different result. You can see that there. And now if I go over to the next one, it's the same deal. It's everything divided by Y and the Y's. So both of those Y's, that's what we're going to get. Now the idea here is we have so many variables that the resulting output is going to be something that is very unpredictable. So you can see up on the scope, it's doing some mathematical crunching, and you can see that it's reaching its numbers at certain points, and boy, and it gets this big pulse. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. Now, if you input this into a filter, into a frequency modulation, and some kind of control voltage, your input, you're going to get some pretty cool results. So there you go. That's what this guy does. It's pretty cool. I got to say. I'm pretty impressed with what this offers. I could definitely see uses for this, especially when you're looking for something that would be unpredictable. And if we're looking at this here, if I just do my x's plus y's, you're getting some really cool little unpredictable things as well. When you throw it into the divided bys, boy, oh boy, look at that. You're getting some really crazy pulses there. That might be something that you might want to use as a gate, a trigger, you know. So lots of possibilities. Lots of possibilities. Something to think about. I think there's got a lot of uses for this. Okay, so there you go. That is the Lissajous. I hope I'm saying that's right. Lissajous LFO by Frozen Wasteland. Really interesting LFO. I'm sure we'll find uses for it in your workflow. Okay, if you do, I'd love to hear about it. Give me some comments in the comment section. You can also reach out to me in the utopian.io Discord. I'd be happy to get back to you with some answers if you got about this kind of tech or music. I'm happy to help. Thank you for watching. Good luck on your music, and I will see you next time.